So, Luke, I don't know if you remember a couple of must have been a few months ago now. We were having a chat with a couple of other people, and the topic came up of technology and language learning, and we talked for quite some time about this. And do you remember this little story that you told me about one evening when you were in Rome and you met a bunch of people who were learning languages? Do you remember that?
I do. I remember we were talking about the fact that, yeah, well, I went to a bar and then a lot of people actually told me, do you know Duolingo? They were asking me if I knew Duolingo. I said, of course, I do know Duolingo, but I gotta confess that I've never used it. So I was kind of surprised that everybody knows Duolingo. And it looks like it's mainstream right now. So, but the thing that I wanted to add is, and once again, I don't know Duolingo because I've never used it. Maybe I took a look, a peek at it maybe once, but my suggestion is always to use, you know, software programs. That's okay, but a lot of people, actually, expert language learners, told me that they haven't learned much with Duolingo, but what is cool about that is that it gets you hooked, like this gamified aspect to language learning. So people, it's like a game. So people do it all the time. But I believe that language is about, interacting with human beings and talking and expressing your ideas. And, you know, at the beginning, probably Duolingo is great to get started, but in the long run, I don't think that's the way to go when,
Yeah.
when you want to learn a language. It has
Um,
its limits.
I mean, I guess like in this case, for the people that you met, everyone was talking about Duolingo, and I guess it's because it's become such a popular piece of technology, and everybody's using it. It's incredibly big. But I guess, like, I mean, it could well have been anything, couldn't it? It could have been Rosetta Stone. It could have been any one of these language learning apps or software out there. And so I guess, like, I mean, you mentioned the kind of gamification aspect, and so, well, like, what I wanted to sort of talk about is like whether you think that whether that is really the big deal here. Like, is it the point of technology that it actually gets people, regardless of whether it works or not? Let's leave that aside for a minute. But like, is it really the value of these things that they actually get people studying, whereas they wouldn't be learning languages if it wasn't for that software?
Well, it's an interesting question, but I gotta confess that I don't think so. I mean, to gamify something, I think that in a way it could happen, meaning that, for example, my Spanish friend Berta told me that she has been speaking a lot of French by using Second Life. Have you ever heard of Second Life? This
Yeah, like a kind of like a reality game, right?
Yeah, which I would never use, but everybody's different, to each his own. And she said that she's been speaking it quite a lot. So it depends. I can't give a fit one all, fits all answer. I just can say that in general, what if something gets you going, well, it's good. The problem is that one thing is to, Second Life is she's already an intermediate or an advanced speaker, I don't remember, but she speaks fluent French. So she's interacting with human beings through technology. So it depends on how you use technology. I think that something like Duolingo has its limits because it's something that you do with yourself. You don't. Maybe you can also hear the sound, but it has its limits. Well, if you use technology to actually talk to human beings, well, that's a different thing. But your question was about gamification. If something is gamified and involves interacting with human beings in an engaging way, why not? So it really depends on the kind of angle you
Yeah.
see this, and I believe that some things are good, some other things are not good. And I just want to ask to add that, if you have to choose between Second Life and having an alternative life on a screen and go out and have a chat, well, definitely I would go for the first one. For the second
For the
one,
second
sorry,
one,
for
yeah.
not for the first one.
Yeah.
People are going to think I'm crazy, like, oh,
Yeah.
because we already spend a lot of time in front of the screen. So, but to answer your question, yes and no. It really depends on your level. I would say that if you're a beginner, I would stay away from that. I mean, like, either stay away from things like that, like, I'm not saying that Duolingo is bad, or you can use Duolingo on top of something else. So,
Yeah, but this is the
book.
question. This is the thing. Like, I mean, obviously, anything that gets people started, that gets people up and running, taking their first steps in a language, it's got to be a good thing, right? I mean, we'd all support that. And so if something like Duolingo gets people gets people started with a language, then fantastic. I guess the question is, like you say, like at what point do you leave that behind and move on to other things, or to what extent do you rely on that? Because I don't know about you, but I mean, I think a lot of successful, prolific language learners that I know, generally speaking, they don't rely on technology, or they don't base their language learning on technology. Um, what's your experience been?
Well, my experience has been the following one. I use technology only to get the material that I'm going to use offline. And I've discovered that, I've been using more and more resources online, but, you know, eh, using something offline helps you with, in terms of concentration, proficiency, and even writing things by hand. There's scientific research proving that actually writing things by hand is much better than typing. So what I do, I use technology. Well, first, as far as input is concerned, I use technology to get the material and then use it offline. And it's been like that, I mean, since, well, before I didn't have a choice because I didn't have the internet when I started, for example, learning German or Dutch. But in the last years, what I did, especially, for example, for Chinese, what I did is to get as much material as possible, organize it, plan my time, and then get to it. And, these 2, 3 hours that I spent at night, every night when I was learning Chinese at the beginning were, priceless. And I think that it would have been much worse if I had spent time, trying to look at the same material on the internet, in front of a screen. On the other hand, though, as far as output is concerned, if I don't have the chance of talking to native speakers here in Rome, like face to face, which is actually my favorite option, well, technology in that regard is amazing because you can get them on Skype, and there's a number of things that you can do on Skype. So first I have to thank the people who created Skype. Obviously now there are many other ways to talk, but I have to thank them because it allows me to work, it allows you to work, it allows to have this conversation, it allows a number of things. And above all, language exchanges, which are so precious to language learners in general. So on the one hand, my advice, what I do, and also my piece of advice is, for input, get as much as you can, but use it offline, because your online life is so distracting without you even realizing that. Well, I mean, we have come to realize that it's distracting, but you don't realize how much detrimental that is for your brain. I don't know how many pages you have open here. I have 25. I have 26 pages. So it's when I'm online, my brain is constantly, trying to look at this side, and then I'll look at the other side, and then somebody calls me on Skype, and then while you talk with that person on Skype, you're doing something else. It's really difficult to be focused on the computer. But when I'm away from the computer, everything changes. I'm more relaxed. I use the book. It's a different game. It's a different world. So my advice, input, just get the internet is an amazing treasure trove for anything, but get it and then get offline. Print something. Do whatever you have to do, but don't stay in front of the screen, because you already spend a lot of time in front of the screen. And you can actually try it and see how more efficient it is to spend a couple of hours just on a piece of text. And unfortunately, you're going to find out that it's more and more difficult for you to focus on that piece of text for more. 30 minutes will look like, I don't know, 3 hours because of the internet. And the second one is to talk to people. The best piece of advice would be get a person and talk to them, walk with them, walk with them on, I don't know, in your city. But if you can't, obviously, because not all the people live in a big European or whatever, in a big city where there's a lot of foreigners, then you can have conversations online. So the internet allows you to do that. That's inevitable.
So I think that the main thing that I take from what you said, is that kind of use of technology, finding material to listen to or to read, or else actually speak to someone, it's kind of a replacement for the kind of physical activities, right? It's using the internet to do things that you couldn't otherwise do if in the real world.
Well,
and that's very different from from an app, which is kind of, because I think my issue with a lot of these kind of apps and software is that they try to kind of dumb down the process, and they try to kind of make learning quick and easy.
Well,
and that, for me, that plays directly into what you just said about focus, right? Because this ability to to stop and to sit, be calm, and to kind of focus, pay attention to something. I mean, it's a huge deal, isn't it?
I agree 100%. I don't know of anyone who has learned a language to fluency by using Duolingo or whatever app. I'm not saying that Duolingo is necessarily bad. I'm just saying that you can use it on top of something. If you have interact, I mean, like on the, I don't know, it could be on the tube. If you're in London, for example, you can use Duolingo if you want. But I might use my time doing something like, I don't know, reading an article or reading a short, easy text if you're a beginner. But spend time in a different way because you know, if there's, I'm not saying that it's necessarily bad, you know, could get you started in language learning, but the problem is that it gets you hooked, and then you don't want to go somewhere else because it gives you the impression that, as you said, language learning is easy, it's just a couple of words, you can translate, blah, 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 and then everything else looks like hard work. And you have the impression that, oh no, I have to get I have to get offline now. I have to focus on a text. Oh my God, you know?
Yeah.
And
But
and
see, but the reality
unfortunately,
is, it is hard work, though, isn't it? I mean, and isn't this part of the problem that, like, so often the technology we find is sort of telling people, you know, you can learn a language in 5 minutes a day. You know, it's really quick and easy. But you're misleading people because it is hard work, isn't it? You've got to be able to sit and focus for a long period of time. And I just don't know if software and apps is the right platform for doing that, because like inherent in that is short attention spans, quick wins, you know, instant gratification, all the things that you know from my experience is what you have to really try and avoid if you want to kind of get inside a language and really learn it.
um, I kind of agree. I kind of tend to agree. The only thing I don't agree with, I mean, maybe it's a matter of terms. I like more the term smart work in the sense that, you know, when people say, oh, language learning is hard work, if you take a look at the overall process, yes, it is hard work. But overall, I prefer the word smart work because it's really true that if you focus 30 minutes a day, but you focus on a piece of paper or offline, and actually you can get good results in a matter, well, depending on the language, in a matter of months. So if you do it in a smart way, it might not even look like hard work because 30 minutes actually is nothing compared with 24 hours. So in general, you're right in the sense that learning a language takes a long time, it takes a lot of action. But you can dilute it or dilute it, I don't remember, dilute it in a long period of time. That's going to make a difference. In this sense, I believe in smart work. So smart work is getting a lot of input, but in a smart way. Planning your time. It's about making your sessions short so that your attention span doesn't go down that much, and stay away from these platforms for a little bit. Maybe these platforms might be interesting when you're an intermediate learner and you can spend some time relaxing, you know, but I would, you know, use this old book, these old books that are not old, but people might consider them old-fashioned. But a book like Asimo or Teach Yourself or other books, they're still valid. You know?
Is that old-fashioned?
Oh well, I don't know, but some people say, "Oh, you're starting with books. You know, you don't use the
Yeah.
internet," and they maybe not old-fashioned, but some people might think, "Oh my God, I have to turn off the computer actually, and I have to I have to hit the book, so to say." And in a way, that might be considered old-fashioned. You know, sometimes people tend to think, "Oh, now it's smart to use the internet, and now you can find all the information." But the internet is a tool. It's not an end per se, and if it becomes an end, then we got a problem.
Yeah.
Because I myself am, you know, guilty of using it too much, but I use it for work, I use it for a number of things. But whenever I find precious information, I make sure that I download it, print it, and you know, read it without looking at the screen. And I believe that looking at the screen is, you know, when you look at the screen, I don't know about you, Ollie, maybe it's my problem, but I cannot focus on something more than 5 minutes and then I have to change a page, which
Yeah,
is
I
terrible.
have exactly the same thing, and I find that even if I can focus, I don't really take it in the same way as if I've got this physical piece of paper in front of me, or you know, if I'm
Exactly. We hop around. We hop around all the time. We think, okay, in search for information, and we think that in this case, this is a glaring example of how actually quantity goes to the detriment of quality because we tend to look at a lot of resources, a lot of stuff, oh, that piece of information. We haven't looked at anything. Like the depth of our thought is actually we're becoming shallow without even knowing that. Everybody, this concerns everybody. And there's this famous video. Also, the book is the internet making us stupid? No, it's not making us stupid. It's making us more superficial in a way. Because actually, I found out, to my much to my dismay, I might add, that reading a book has become difficult. And once I was reading this wonderful book, which is called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I've been reading it, and then I read like 5 pages, and I realized that, oh, 5 pages. I thought I had read like 30. It looked like 5 pages looked like, 10 minutes looked like an hour of reading. And I just realized, this is not good, Before, when I was 13 or 14, I could spend 5, 6, 7. I still remember that I read a book, which is called The Stand by Stephen King, in a matter of 3 days. It's a gigantic book. I was like completely absorbed. I don't know if I could do that now. I don't think so. I think after 30 minutes, I should take a break, then another break, and I was completely absorbed. It's like as if my brain had changed a little bit, and that's not good,
And yet, the world around, when you look at the world around us, wherever you go on the metro, on the street, in the office, people are just living their lives on their phones, on the internet, and so I wonder, is it going to become more hard? Is it going to become harder to learn languages with this environment that we've got? Because I remember when we had this conversation before, one of the things that we both said was that, which is something like really, really interesting, I think, which is that we remember what language learning was like before the internet.
That's another very interesting point. I would say, I would answer this way. It's true that before we were more focused, we could spend more time on books, etc. But the thing is that we also had difficulty finding resources. I still remember very well, in 1999, the internet had already been created, but I was not using it at the time. I remember that I was desperate for material in Dutch, because I had bought Teach Yourself, and then I had bought Asimal. But apart from that, when I hit the intermediate stage, so to say, so I finished the books, then I told myself, I have nothing to read or nothing to watch. And then I remember that my cousin went to Amsterdam, and I begged her actually, please buy me a couple of books. I would have been super happy if she had given me, I don't know, she had bought me some DVDs. Nowadays, you can watch whatever you want, TV shows, etc., etc. So on the one hand, it's true that we had less possibilities. Now we have, the possibilities are, limitless for a lot of languages. You can do whatever you want. You can spend the whole day watching, reading, and speaking, even writing in Dutch, for example, and getting corrections on the fly, etc. But we have this curse of too much. We have too much. So I've noticed that people get lost in the dungeon. So they tend to download a lot of resources and then end up using not even one of these resources, and they have this problem of attention. So on the one hand, the internet looks like this treasure trove, that lures us into this kind of kingdom where we have everything, and we tend to look at how much we have, and then we don't do anything useful with it, and then you have this attention span problem. So it's I don't think that the destiny of language learners depends on them. Meaning, for every single language learner, it's up to you to tell yourself, you know what, this is the technology. It gives me a lot of possibilities, but it can also take a lot of my time. So it's up to you how to organize and to make decisions. And then if you have the courage of actually looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, look at how much time I've spent on Facebook, look at how much time I spent hopping, from side to side, then everything can change. But the problem is that it's a personal choice. You have limitless possibilities nowadays, but it's up to you to decide what you want to do with the technology, and that's the real key point here.
I mean, it's a choice, but it's also experience, isn't it? I mean, the experience of, because I guess what I sort of really saw into that point was the fact that, because we grew up in a time where there wasn't the internet, or the internet was just at the beginning, we were lucky enough to have this experience of what it's like to learn by reading books, listening to CDs and things like that. For people who are 10, 15, 20 years younger than us, who have grown up with technology, it seems to me they have an extra piece of work ahead of them now because they have to learn how to step away.
I agree. It's more difficult. I actually think I always tell my friends we're lucky that we were born in 1980 because we're talking about language learning, but you can see the detrimental aspects of the internet. Like a 12-year-old kid can watch porn. Can you imagine the impact it has on his or her mind? This is not just a problem of language learning. It's an overall destruction. It can be dangerous. So you're right when you say that a certain generation, well, they're not doomed, but we also have the responsibility of telling them, look, we have had this experience, but they still have a choice of reading books. I think it's responsibility of parents who are listening, and then also us to say, look, the offline world is still valid, and the online world is great, but you have to make proper use of it. And I think also, and there's a lot of smart people, so they will realize that something is wrong. The compulsive use of I've read an article maybe a couple of days ago about the compulsive use by teenagers of Facebook social networks is actually very bad for their health, and like the doctors themselves say, look, we had a problem. So a lot of people will find out that they have a problem, not even just, oh, I can't learn a language, I can't focus enough. It's an overall problem. And maybe they're going to be conscious of that. You're going to realize, okay, this is not the way it works. I know of a lot of people, I read a lot of articles, but also met people personally who told me, you know what, I've had enough of Facebook, I've had enough of this. I'm just trying to use the computer as least as possible. And obviously these people, the people who are also learning languages, they are realizing that. So unfortunately, I think it's going to be a minority. Unfortunately, I think that a lot of people are going to fall into the trap, and possibly they're going to find out that they find themselves in a trap. Because I'm not saying that the internet is a trap, but it can easily become addictive. Everybody's addicted to the internet nowadays. Have you noticed that somebody gets to your house, they say the first thing is they look for the key, the wire for the wireless.
Yeah.
I have when I have guests, that's especially from America. Here from Europe, a little bit less. I don't know why, but in general, that's the very first thing they ask. It's like, what is the internet? Can you give me the internet? It's like, oh my God, otherwise they get lost. And it happened to me as well. When I don't have the internet, I get a little bit nervous. I'm not connected. Can you imagine 24 hours without being connected? Looks like 3 months. So
yeah. What happens if I miss this or if I miss that? Yeah.
And the truth is, you don't miss anything. It's just that, we're so connected that it has this addictive thing that even with social media, if you spend 24 hours away from Facebook, oh my God, I probably, you start this nagging thought that a lot of people wrote to you and you didn't get back to them. And, it's addictive, but you become part of the system and you can't do without it. And it's very dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, that's really, it's been a fascinating conversation, and that's exactly why I wanted to record this chat, because I think it's a growing problem, and it's something that hopefully people could listen to this and realize that there is a way, there is a path other than technology and apps and stuff like that, and it's there, and it's how a lot of us have had success with languages before. So listen, thanks very much for taking the time. Before you go, where can people find you? Where would you like to send people if they'd like to find out more about Luca?
Well, I got a blog which is called www.thepolyglotdream.com. This is my blog. I also have a YouTube channel. If you write Luca Lampariello, Lampariello, and that's Luca, L-U-C-A, not Lucas, as they normally call me in French. You can find me easily, and also on Google you can find a bunch of stuff. But basically, it's YouTube and my blog.
Cool, and I'll link to both of those in the show notes as well if anyone would like to follow up on that. Okay, man, thanks a lot. Take it easy.
Fantastic. Take care, Ollie.
Cheers.
Ciao.